Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself wondering if moving to a new place in retirement could actually improve your quality of life? Not just financially, but emotionally too? Maybe you're in your late 50s or early 60s, and you're starting to feel like the house you've lived in for decades isn't quite working anymore. It's too big, too expensive to maintain, too quiet since the kids moved out. Or maybe you've always dreamed of waking up somewhere warmer, closer to family, or just simpler. If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone. More and more people between 50 and 75 are seriously considering relocating in retirement, not just to save money, but to live better. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know before making that kind of move. I'll share the key questions you should be asking yourself, real-life examples of people who've done it, some with success, some with regrets, and practical steps you can take to avoid common pitfalls. So if you've ever thought, maybe it's time for a change, but I don't want to mess this up, then stick around. This might just give you the clarity you've been looking for. Now, let me break this down for you. When people think about relocating in retirement, the first thing that comes to mind is usually downsizing. And that makes sense. A smaller home usually means lower utility bills, less upkeep, and sometimes even lower taxes. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Downsizing isn't just about square footage. It's about right-sizing your life. I spoke with a woman named Patricia, 67, who sold her 4-bedroom home in the suburbs of Chicago and moved to a condo in Asheville, North Carolina. On paper, it made perfect sense. She cut her property taxes by more than half. The new place had no yard to maintain, and it was within walking distance to shops and her doctor's office. But 6 months in, Patricia told me something that really stuck with me. She said, "I saved money, but I underestimated how much I'd miss my neighbors. I didn't realize how rooted I was in my old community until I left it." That's one of the hidden risks with relocating. You can plan all you want for the financial side, but if you don't think through the emotional side, your sense of belonging, your routine, your social life, you can end up feeling more isolated than liberated. So here's a suggestion. Before you commit to moving, try living in your new area for a month. Rent a short-term place. See what it feels like to shop for groceries, to go to the pharmacy, to just walk around. It's one thing to fall in love with a location on vacation. It's another to live there during an ordinary Tuesday. Another big question is whether you want to be closer to family. That sounds like an easy yes, but it can get tricky. I worked with a client named Ron, 72, who moved from British Columbia to Ontario to be near his daughter and grandkids. But within a year, his daughter's job relocated again, and suddenly Ron was stuck in a new place, far from his old friends, and his family was now 2 provinces away. So if being near family is a big reason you're considering a move, ask yourself, what's their long-term plan? Is their situation stable? Have you talked openly with them about your expectations? Because if you're hoping to see them every weekend and they're only available once a month, that might lead to disappointment. All right, let's talk money. Yes, relocating can save you money, but only if you're honest with yourself about the real costs, not just the ones up front, but the hidden ones too. Let's say you're moving from Toronto to a smaller city like Halifax. Housing costs go down, property taxes might be lower, and your monthly expenses could shrink. But have you factored in things like travel? If your family is still back in Toronto, are you planning to fly back often? Will you need a car when you didn't before? What about medical specialists? Are they easy to access where you're going? These are the kinds of things that sneak up on people. Here's one that's often overlooked: long-term care access. In some smaller or more rural communities, healthcare might be fine for everyday needs, but if you need a specialist or memory care or in-home support later on, it may be a challenge. If you're in your 50s or early 60s, now is actually the perfect time to start scouting these things out. Think of it as laying the groundwork for future you. Let me give you an example. James and Carol, both 63, moved from Sydney, Australia to Hobart, Tasmania to enjoy a slower pace and more affordable living. They found a cozy home with ocean views for half the price of their old place. Sounds ideal, right? But Carol has early-stage Parkinson's, and within 2 years, they realized Hobart didn't have the specialists or community resources she needed. They ended up moving again, back to Sydney, and the emotional and financial cost of that double move was draining. So don't just look at a map and pick the cheapest spot. Think about how your needs might evolve over time. If you have any chronic health concerns, or even if you don't, Ask what services will be available to you 5 or 10 years from now. And while we're being honest, let's talk about identity. For a lot of people, home isn't just a place. It's part of who you are. The streets you know, the people you run into at the post office, the local cafe where they know your order. Leaving that behind can feel like letting go of a piece of yourself. Some people adjust quickly, others, not so much. If you're the kind of person who finds comfort in familiarity, then moving somewhere completely new might be more stressful than freeing. But if you're craving a fresh start, new community, new routines, maybe even a bit of reinvention, then relocation might be exactly what you need. You just have to be clear about why you want to move. Are you running away from something, like loneliness or high costs? Or are you running towards something, like better weather or community or opportunity? That distinction matters. Because when things get tough, and they will at times, you'll want to remember the why behind your choice. So here's what I'd recommend. Take out a piece of paper. Yes, really, and divide it into 3 sections. Label them. What I want, what I need, what I'm afraid of. Then start writing. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just be honest. This little exercise can clarify so much. You might realize that what you really want isn't a new city. Maybe it's just a simpler life in the same town, or a smaller house with fewer responsibilities. Or maybe your dream of living near the coast is absolutely worth pursuing. And now you've got a roadmap to get there without regret. And that's exactly where I'll pick up in the next part. How to turn your relocation dream into a practical, step-by-step plan that fits your budget, your lifestyle, and your future needs. We'll get into how to test drive a new city, spot red flags before you move, and avoid the rose-colored glasses trap. But before we get into all of that, if this video has helped you think differently about retirement or relocating, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your own thoughts. Are you considering a move? Have you done it already? What surprised you the most? And if you found this helpful, give it a like, share it with a friend who's in a similar season of life, and don't forget to subscribe for more clear, calm financial guidance made just for you. So let's talk about how you can turn your relocation dream into something real, something practical. I'm not talking about just browsing Zillow or watching retirement in Portugal videos on YouTube. I mean creating a plan that actually fits your lifestyle, your health, your finances, and your future. Let me walk you through this step by step. Start by identifying your non-negotiables. What are the things you absolutely must have in a new home or community? Is it access to a good hospital within 15 minutes? A grocery store you can walk to? A church or community center that feels like home? Be specific. The more honest you are about what you really need, not what sounds nice, the easier it is to filter through options. I worked with a couple from Manchester, both in their early 70s. They were dead set on moving to the countryside. They pictured long walks, fresh air, peaceful mornings. But after spending 2 weeks trial living in a small village, they realized something important. They missed people. A lot. They missed the convenience of hopping on a bus. And most of all, they missed their routine. That 2-week trial saved them thousands of pounds, and probably a lot of heartache. So here's something I'd recommend to you. Treat your move like a test drive. Don't just visit your potential new town during summer vacation when everything looks postcard perfect. Try to experience it on a regular Tuesday afternoon. Is it quiet? Or too quiet? Do people make eye contact at the shops? Is public transport reliable or even available? Ask yourself, can I imagine myself living here when I'm 85? That's a big one. Because no matter how healthy you are today, the reality is that your needs will change. Your body will ask different things from you. So think long term. Now, let's tackle the finances. A lot of people assume that moving to a smaller or cheaper town automatically means saving money. But here's what often gets missed. The move itself costs more than you think. Between legal fees, real estate agent commissions, moving services, maybe even furniture replacements to fit the new space, it adds up fast. Then there's the emotional cost. Some people sell their longtime home, only to find out 6 months later that they weren't quite ready. They miss the garden. They miss the familiarity. Some even buy back into their old neighborhood, which, let me tell you, isn't always financially feasible. So here's what I suggest. Before you sell anything, rent first. Even if it's for 3 months. Give yourself room to feel it out without the pressure of a permanent decision. A short-term lease might cost more upfront, but it could save you from a very expensive mistake. And don't forget the taxes. If you're in the US, Different states have very different tax rules for retirees. Some states don't tax Social Security. Others do. Some have inheritance taxes. Some don't. In Canada, provincial taxes can vary more than you think. In the UK and Australia, things like stamp duty and capital gains come into play if you're downsizing. So please, talk to a financial advisor or tax specialist before you move, even if just for one consultation. A single conversation could help you avoid years of frustration or regret. Now, let's shift gears a bit. Have you thought about who you'll connect with once you move? I don't just mean neighbors or the cashier at the supermarket. I'm talking about actual social connections, the people who know your name, who check in on you, who invite you over for tea or coffee. That stuff matters more than people realize. Loneliness is a real risk in retirement, especially if you move away from everyone you know. So as part of your relocation plan, ask yourself, where will I find community? Is there a walking group, a gardening club, a library with workshops, or a local market where people gather? A man I worked with, Sam, moved from Melbourne to a small coastal town. He loved the peace and quiet, but after 6 months, he said, "I've never felt more alone." He ended up volunteering at a local animal shelter, and that single decision changed everything. It gave him structure, relationships, purpose. So before you move, look for those possibilities. It might not feel urgent now, but it will matter later. All right, let's talk a bit about housing design, something folks often overlook until it's too late. If you're buying or renting a new place, make sure it's set up for aging comfortably. No steep stairs, good lighting, wide doorways, easy access to the bathroom at night. These sound like small things now, but they make a big difference later on. I know one woman who moved into a charming little cottage in Devon. It had character, sure, but the narrow stairs and uneven floors became a daily hazard. She ended up needing to sell just 3 years later. You don't want to be forced into a second move when you're older, more vulnerable, and possibly on a tighter budget. So think ahead. Choose a place that lets you grow older in comfort, not just style. Now, I want to talk about emotions. Relocating in retirement isn't just a financial move. It's a life move. It can feel like closing a chapter. That can bring up grief, nostalgia, fear, even guilt. You might feel pressure to stay near the grandkids, or guilt for wanting to leave cold winters behind. You might feel uncertain about starting over at 70, like you're too old to make new friends or build a new life. Let me say this clearly. You're not too old for any of that. Yes, it's a big change, but change doesn't have to be chaotic. In fact, for many people, this phase of life becomes one of the most freeing, most intentional seasons they've ever lived. You've earned that right to choose peace, simplicity, or even adventure, if that's what calls you. But here's what matters. Make sure it's your choice. Not something you're doing just because everyone else is. Not something you're doing out of fear or pressure. Take the time to reflect, to plan, to test, and to talk to people who've done it, both successfully and not. Learn from their experience. Let their stories be part of your research. And if you do choose to relocate, do it on your terms. Do it because you're ready to start a new chapter, not because you're trying to erase the old one. Because let me tell you, there's still plenty of life ahead. Whether you move or stay put, this chapter can be just as rich, just as full, and just as meaningful as the ones before it, if not more. So, if this video gave you something to think about, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you relocated in retirement? Are you considering it now? What's your biggest question or concern? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone in their 60s or 70s who's been talking about moving, send this video their way. You never know, it might save them time, money, and stress. Make sure to like the video if it helped, share it if you think it could help someone else, and subscribe for more practical, thoughtful advice just like this. And hey, whether you move or stay, I hope you find a place that feels right. Not just on paper, but in your bones. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.